Welcome to Salcedo Paranormal, and tonight I am sharing true paranormal stories from the web. As always, you can find all episodes of the show, along with links to social media and other ways to contact me, at the podcast page, and that is salcedoparanormal.podbean.com. That's SALSIDO paranormal.podbean.com. Always happy to hear from you all, whether you have comments or questions or topic suggestions, or stories of paranormal experiences, whether they're your own or from others that you trust. Happy to either read those or have you join me on the show to talk about them. And thank you all for listening to the show, whether it's through the live streams on Discord, or on the podcast or YouTube feeds, or on the Troubled Minds Radio Network, KUAP Digital Broadcasting, and that can be heard every night. My show, anyway, can be heard every night on the station. 2 episodes will be featured there at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, right before Troubled Minds Radio airs as well. So, and I also want to thank, as always, Michael Strange, host of Troubled Minds Radio, and Liam Martin, host of Exiled Minds podcast, for helping to get the show ready and put it up on the station as well, including making the music that you hear before, or at the start and then the end of the episodes. So I think that takes care of everything. Oh, no, it doesn't. There's one more thing I almost forgot. If you'd like to support the show, there are a few different ways to do that. You can always share it with others, rate and review it on the platform of choice, and that you listen to it, on. I can't talk tonight. Anyway, or if you are interested in paranormal fiction or nonfiction books, you can find some of those that I've written available on Amazon.com. And also there are direct donation links to, as of right now anyway, to PayPal and Venmo. Just in case you are able and you would like to help support the show, make it, keep it going as it is, and maybe someday make it better with research materials, and just help with the cost of equipment and everything. There are expenses, and at this point I could use all the help I can get. But help is always appreciated, but never expected. So, but yeah, thank you all for listening as always, and being here and commenting on all the shows when you do on those various media platforms. And yeah, I think that does take care of everything now. So I'll get to the stories here. Looking forward to the next show, which is going to be episode 400 of this podcast. And I think from that point on, I will start mentioning the episode number just to help keep track of these shows as we go forward, and go from there. So really is amazing that it has come this far, to me anyway. When I started, I wasn't sure how long I'd be able to keep it going, or if I'd want to keep it going. I had no idea, and here we are almost at 400. So getting to these stories here. This one says, this happened when I was in somewhere around elementary to middle school. I went to a friend's house to stay overnight. It was practically a mansion with 2 floors, a pool, and a private forest. We spent the day having fun, playing around, until we sat down at a piano in an L-shaped room near the kitchen. I wanted to play a certain song, and so I had to concentrate hard. At one point, my friends started tapping me on the shoulder. I told them I had to concentrate, and then ignored them. When I finished the song, they told me to look into the corner of the room near the entrance to the kitchen. Hanging down and to the side, I saw the head and hands of a small, dark figure with a white ring or circle where a face should have been. We got up, but my friend ran away, while I went toward the kitchen to figure out what we had seen. But it had vanished, and I didn't find anything. What did we see, and where did it go? That's the end of the story. Amazing sighting there. I don't know what they saw. It sounds almost like a shadow version of maybe like a goblin or an imp or something. Possibly. Sounds almost like a shadow figure, but they don't say it was just made of shadow. Just that it was basically dark, like black. And then that white circle or ring where its face should have been. If it was a ring, then who knows what that means. But either way, if there was a circle there, you would think they would have been able to see a face, if there was a face in there to see. So I don't know how to explain that one. It just sounds like some kind of a creature that appeared and was there for a little while because the friend was trying to get the writer's attention. But then when they got up from in front of the piano, it was just gone. So I don't know, but I've never heard a description quite like that before for anything. That's the amazing thing about doing these shows is you have sort of your what sound like common descriptions of beings, of things that people have seen, where you could put so many stories together and they would all have basically the same description. But then you have stories like this where it doesn't exactly fit into any one thing that I can think of, anyway. Any one kind of description for what it could be that they saw. And those kinds of unique stories are really amazing to me because it shows that really there's so much out there that we may not have any idea about, and it's ironic in a way. It almost seems certain things like apparitions, like human apparitions and gray aliens and even Bigfoot, it almost makes them in a way seem normal or common, which in a way kind of, if you're just looking at all these stories of experiences, in a way, I guess you could maybe say that they are, when you look at that sort of scale and that sample size. So yeah, I don't know what they saw, but I'm glad it was gone. It didn't cause any other trouble. It may have just been curious about the sound or the song, or about the new person in the house. I do think a lot of times when people have experiences in places where they haven't been before, whoever or whatever is in there may just be trying to figure out who it is that is new and that's in the house and why they're there. And I don't think they always mean to be seen. I think in some cases maybe they do. There's always, every story, every experience is different. But I don't think that's the case in every situation. I think in some cases, these, even like some other stories of just regular apparitions, they seem to be curious about the people that are in the place. And this is where I again, as I always say, where I have such a hard time with Hollywood, because whenever anyone shows up in a place, the instant reaction of the paranormal entity there that is in the location is that they're going to harm the people that show up. That for whatever reason, and that's just not always the case. I don't think so. Neat story, and glad nothing else happened there. But I don't know what they saw. So, moving on to the second story here. This says, around a year ago, my mom told me about something odd she heard from outside her house, somewhere between midnight and 1 in the morning. It was the sound of church bells. She thought it was creepy, in part because she didn't know of any churches that marked the time that late at night, but also because in all of her time living in that area, she had never heard church bells at all. She has lived in the same house and area for many years. I recently came to visit my mom and stay with her for a little while. About an hour ago, while I was outside smoking, I heard the bells as well. The sounds lasted for around 30 seconds before they stopped. I stayed outside for another few minutes, but didn't hear them again. When I went back inside, I saw that it was nearly midnight. All I heard were owls in the area, hooting during and after the church bells stopped. That doesn't make sense. My fault there. Anyway, when my mom got up a while later, I told her what had happened. She nodded and said that she had heard them, the church bells, a few times as well, and always within that same time frame, between midnight and 1 a.m. I've lived in the southern part of the U.S. for my entire life. And even though I have heard church bells in other towns and places, I have never heard them in the town where my mom lives. Not in all the time I've been there. In the places where I have heard them, there was always a reason, usually a gathering of some kind. And I have heard church bells used to mark time as well. But again, never in this town. And then it says, update. I was just outside again for another smoke. This is at around 3:30 in the morning. And I heard the bells again. And this time, again, I heard owls hooting as well. The owls even triggered a nearby motion sensor light with their flight. I know that many people would just write off the sound of these church bells, and I am normally skeptical of the paranormal. But given what I know of this area, the logical explanations don't seem to fit. So what can be causing these sounds? And what can it mean? That's the end of the story. I've heard of that sound before, people hearing those kinds of sounds before, in places where maybe there aren't any church bells, at least in the immediate area. And I don't doubt that sometimes sound can carry, but I would think if it did, that it would still be heard more often. Even with different weather conditions, I would think that the mom, at the very least, that is there all the time, would hear those sounds more often and be able to maybe find a pattern with the weather or whatever. And it doesn't sound like that's the case. And the amazing thing about sounds is, I'm sure you all have heard stories about the sounds of footsteps, sounds of voices, just all different things. But in this case, it's church bells. And again, going back to one of the points of the story where the writer was talking about how usually the reason for those sounds, for church bells in general, is sort of or at least one of the most common reasons, is to call people there for a gathering, or to indicate that there's a gathering, ceremony or mass or whatever that's going on there. So is that are there somehow time slips going on where those bells are coming from either the past or the future, and there either was or there's going to be a church nearby? Are they more of a residual thing where it's not even so much a time slip, it's just that energy of that sound? Maybe even just, I don't know how that worked though, unless it was somehow built into the landscape, somehow, the energy in the landscape. I wonder what the environment is near that house. If it's a lot of water or if it's a lot of, let's say, stone or rock, maybe remains somehow like the foundation of a building, a church that may have been there before that's not there now. I'm just trying to figure out possible reasons for a residual sound of those bells. But either way, I don't know. But I do think, obviously, in some cases, those sounds can be explained. But then also, I don't doubt that in certain cases, when people really sort of consider all the details and the circumstances, that there are these sounds that people hear that they can't explain. So, neat story there. And I wonder if the sound still creeped out the people there, the writer and their mom, or if it was just the first time hearing them that they were creeped out. I would think if they continue to be creeped out or get a weird feeling from those sounds, then that might also indicate that they are paranormal in nature. So that's one thing that is not really mentioned. But yeah, I don't know with that one. So, but I think I can get to one more story here before we have to end the show. So let me get to the stories, and we'll go from there. This is let me see here. Okay. This one says, we lived in an old house that our family had purchased from the children of the previous owner, an older man. The house came fully furnished with many of the previous owner's belongings still in there. One day, when I was around 5 or 6 years old, I sat on my bedroom floor playing with some toy horses. At some point, I looked up and out of my room and saw 3 masks floating in a triangle in the air. One appeared to be that of a witch. Another looked to be some kind of devilish monster, and the third appeared to be a werewolf or dog man of some kind. And they all appeared to be very angry. From then on, I set up my toys in my closet so that I wouldn't have to see anything like that again. Various family members, including myself, also saw a glowing green ball float through the living room at the same time. I don't remember a lot of details about what else happened there, except one experience my dad told me about later. He said that one day he heard someone shout, "Hey," and he responded just as he remembered that there was no one else in the house. This was also back in the 90s, before there was any kind of voice-activated technology available. Eventually, my parents sold the house. While preparing for the move, my dad found a box containing some of the previous owner's belongings. It turns out that the old man had been a soldier during World War II. My dad found some odds and ends from Japan, as well as some pictures showing the then younger man in that part of the world during that time. There were people in some of those pictures wearing masks that were similar to what I had seen. It wasn't until many years later that, while visiting a tattoo parlor, I learned that these were known as Oni masks from that region of the world. And I'm sorry if I'm not saying that word correctly. But that's the story. And I have a little bit here. I'm going to just talk about as far as what an Oni mask is, or what an Oni is. And that is another word, apparently, in Japan, or in that part of the world anyway, for something like a orc or ogre or troll or demon in Japanese folklore. And so these masks are basically meant to represent that. And these are really, let's see here, just looking at, so there it says they're believed to live in caves or deep in the mountains. Let's see here. So it's, and these creatures are known for their superhuman strength and have been, this is according to things I found online, associated with powers like thunder and lightning, along with their evil nature manifesting in their propensity for murder and cannibalism. So there's more here, but just to give a basic idea of what kind of masks that the writer was talking about there. So I wonder about that, those masks. Now, where are those masks still somewhere in that house? Did they have some kind of energy attached to them that even the original owner didn't know about? A lot of questions there as to what created that apparition and why it was there. And I mean, it is also kind of odd to me in a way that all the owner's belongings, or a lot of them, were left behind. It makes me wonder if the family had other experiences there, either while the original owner was alive, or even after he passed, that made it so they didn't even want to bother going in the house again. But it doesn't sound like, I don't know, it sounds like there was a little bit of activity in the house. I mean, I guess I should say more than a little bit. I'm thinking of, I don't know. To me, that's a few things there. I just realized it's not really just a little bit. It's more than couple things there. So maybe there was a lot of activity there in the house that the family just didn't want to deal with. That wouldn't surprise me. For various reasons, whether it was overall, even if it was not even necessarily negative, if you're not used to any of these things happening, the reaction, the tendency towards fear is understandable. And so I could see the family just sort of not wanting to deal with that. But as to what was causing those images of those masks to be floating through the house, and then that I wonder if anyway, there's just so many questions there. If the green light, the green ball of light, was the same thing as the masks or something different. But thank you all for listening, and I'll be back tomorrow with episode 400 of Salcedo Paranormal. Take care, everyone.